DVR'd the Bill O'Reilly special on News Nation tonight at 9 o'clock. And then we go into the break, and Mr. Millennial Boy in there in the control room, Leandro, he's the one that answers the phones when you call, gave me a hard time because he said, DVR? What do you mean DVR? I'm like, yeah, I DVR stuff that I want to watch later. He goes, you don't stream it like TiVo? I said, no, not like TiVo, my cable box. And so it got me thinking of things that were great, that we loved when we were kids, and we no longer have anymore. And Casey, the liberal Joe Biden, Kamala Harris lover that you all know of your regular listeners, he sent me a message saying MAGA Manny loves Tupperware parties. And I did. I remember my mom hosting them when I was a kid. You've got no choice back then. We had no choice but to watch our favorite TV shows live. And I'll get to the phones in a second. You've been holding for a while. 866-610-NEWS. But back then there was no recording. You couldn't pause. For most of us, for a time, you had to get up from the couch to change the channel or turn up the volume. And I remember doing it for so many shows, like Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley and Three's Company, The Jeffersons, All in the Family, Dynasty in Dallas. The family would get together. We'd sit, come on, it's starting, and everybody would sit down and watch it. And then it got me thinking about the other things that I loved when we were kids that are no longer around. I've never been a gamer guy, but we had Pong, and we had Atari when it first came out. Steven, who is in here, handles all of the social media stuff, and this speaks volumes about where this guy is mentally. The first thing that came to his mind that he missed from his childhood, you remember those combs that were switchblades? That's where this guy's mind is. That's the first thing he thought of. And I love to think about how things work these days. Think about this. We only had landline phones back then, or phone booths, right? Before we had pagers or anything. If you weren't home, nobody could reach you before answering machines. How great was that? Not being at the mercy of your phone or text messages, the absolute craziness of constantly being connected. And then I thought, finally, and I'll go to the phones right now in a second, the restaurants that we used to have down here, Royal Castle and Lum's and Sambo's. Remember Sambo's? Beefsteak Charlie's and Steak and Ale. Coño, I'm on a roll. Eckerd Drugs. Remember having to go to Eckerd Drugs to get your pictures developed? You'd leave the roll there, and then you'd come back 24 hours later or something, and it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. So, yes, we could talk politics, but it's a Friday, and I'd like this to be a recurring theme on Fridays. Just do something fun and relaxing and enjoy ourselves. So, 866-610-6397, and the caller who's been holding longest is Miss Maria. Buenos dias.
Hola, Manny. ¿Cómo estás?
Good. How are you?
I am very well. Just wanted to say that you're doing it. I love your show.
Thank you so
much. I love your show. I hear it every day. Okay, keep up the good work. What I miss the most about growing up, I'm an old dog. I was actually at the Orange Bowl when the Dolphins beat the Chicago Bears.
Yes.
For their first loss of that season.
Oh, she's good.
Okay. Yes, the place was a dump.
Yeah.
But man, that place was magic.
Yeah.
That place tenía algo. Tenía this certain aura, this certain thing that we will never see like that again.
1,000%. I remember that game in 1985. It was a Monday night game, I think, right? And it was their one loss.
It was a Monday night game.
Yeah.
My boss has gotten us tickets. We were sitting in the 50-yard line right behind the bench of the Dolphins. I lost my voice for about 4 days.
How awesome. How awesome was that?
It was okay. You can't. There's no joy in anything anymore.
Yeah.
Everything is a fight. It's an argument. Coño, It's like I miss the old days.
1,000%, Maria. Thank you very much for sharing that. Great memories there. 866-610-6397, and we'll go through the ones who've been holding longest. James, you're up next. Good morning.
Good morning, Manny. Hey, how you doing?
Good, brother. How are you?
There's pretty good. There's one thing that I truly miss are Toys R Us and KB Toys, and my children will never experience that, going to an actual dedicated toy store.
Yeah, it's so different, isn't it? Yeah. What was Lionel Play World was another one that we had when we were kids, probably a little bit older than you, but it was before Toys R Us existed. Same thing.
Yeah, man, it's a shame.
Yeah, I appreciate it. There's so many things, right, from our childhood that our kids will never get to experience. I don't know a whole lot of people that let their kids out and just, hey, go play, go ride your bike, whatever, and just come back when it gets dark. And that was our childhood. Well, I remember I grew up in Kendall. I would drive, and it's probably 4 miles from my house where I grew up in the Crossings to Kendall Lakes Mall, probably 4 miles. As like an 11, 12-year-old, I'd never let my kid do that these days. Yeah. All right. I appreciate the call. Thank you very much. 866-610-6397. We grew up in a different world than they're growing up, with all due respect. Kim Ann, you're up next. Good morning, my love.
Oh, yeah, Manny. Man, oh, man, I miss my record store so much.
Specs and Q
Seriously.
Records.
Oh, my goodness. Peaches. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the big deal here. But 2 more. The doctor that came to the house calls, and actually treated pain without making you feel like, you were a second-class citizen for being in.
That's prehistoric.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I remember, and thank you very much, Kim Ann. I remember camping outside so many concerts. You had to camp out the night before outside of Specs, so you'd be one of the first ones in line to get tickets. And before Ticketmaster down here anyway, there was Bass. You remember Bass tickets? Best available selected seats. And we'd hang out. You'd go with your friends from high school or whatever, and you just spend the night there sleeping outside the store. And we were, had fake IDs, so we'd go to the Utotem. Remember Utotem? The Circle K or whatever, and you'd get beer, and there'd be underage drinking and other stuff going on. But, man, there were great times. Dennis, you're up next. Good morning.
Hi,
Dennis, let me just say, I'm not saying I took part in underage drinking, but I knew people who did. Let me just straighten that out.
I did. Yeah, if you're not American, you're not drinking underage. So here's what I miss.
Yeah,
I miss, and this is a false sense of security. I hate digital currency. But we used to have bank books, a paper bank book that you hold in your hand.
Yeah.
And you take your paper route money, you go to the bank, and they would print out your deposit on the bank book and hand it back to you. And there's just something material about it that I used to think that was, it's probably no more secure, but it just felt like it.
Right. Almost like getting a stamp on your passport. No, well, remember we used to, I don't know if you did, but that's the way I was raised. You got to balance your checkbook, right? And if you went through all of these checks and you were like 3 cents off, you were like, oh, damn it, I got to go back. Where'd those 3 cents go?
Yeah, I would do that.
Yeah.
And politically, real quick, Manny, but this is the reason I started listening to you. You have an opinion that you stick to, and I appreciate that. People call you up. I've heard people call you up and say, hey, Manny, know your audience. Why are you saying this stuff? And you're like, no, I'm not changing my opinion. And there's so few people that stick to what they believe in, stick to what they say, and have an opinion and are proud of it. And kudos on you. Bravo. And I say thank you, and that's why I listen to you.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you very much for the kind words and for sharing. Look, I talked about it yesterday. I had on social media, on Instagram or whatever, people sending me messages thinking they're going to bully me into changing my position or not saying bad things about Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or whatever. And I'm just me, man. Take me or leave me. I appreciate the kind words, though. 866-610-6397. Scott, you're up next. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Hey, listen, I got to tell you, I'm getting a little teared up here. You guys are taking me back to some wonderful memories.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, God, yeah. I got a couple. Hey, look, the Skipper Chuck show.
Oh, I was on
That's
Skipper
going way
Chuck.
Back now.
Yep, Chuck Zink.
Oh, you were. Yeah, okay, awesome. Yeah. And I'll go a little farther. Hey, you remember Captain Zero on UHF?
That one I don't remember, Captain Zero, but I'll tell you a quick story, Scott. Yeah. So you brought up the Skipper Chuck show. Obviously, you grew up down here, and it was a local variety show that if you grew up in South Florida in the 60s and 70s, you were probably part of, right? You went there to be part of the studio audience and play the games and stuff. There was another one called Duck, Duck, Goose. But anyway, so I've been in radio for 35 years. So later in years, Chuck Zink, who was Skipper Chuck, started doing it was an infomercial, like a radio infomercial on the weekends. I think it was for Century Village or something. And he's passed now, so I hope I could relay this. But so this guy was like a South Florida hero to kids. And so I'm working at one of the radio stations, got a chance to work with him. And during one of the commercial breaks, I walk into the studio to tell him something, and I hear him throwing around profanities at the person who's in there with him, and it just kind of broke That's the day my childhood ended, even though I was probably 30 years old at the time, because it was like Skipper Chuck doesn't say bad words. And here I heard him throwing around the F word. I'm loving catching up. Obviously, you are too, because we've got a full board of calls. 866-610-6397. Come right back with your calls until 12 noon.